The coronavirus has hit our communities hard, and now a new warning from the CDC about a dangerous second wave. Could this next round be more deadly?
We can anticipate that this will be back. It's going to be more complicated.
Plus, we're washing, wiping, disinfecting. How do we know the virus is really gone?
Can I get COVID from my takeout bag?
Can coronavirus live on a beard, and for how long?
We're answering your questions coming up next. It's day 98 of the coronavirus pandemic in America, and our communities have been hit hard by COVID-19, taking tens of thousands of lives. And I know a lot of you are wondering, when will this nightmare be over? But now, a new warning from experts, including our own CDC director, that there may be a dangerous potential second wave coming in the fall. Could the next round of this devastating disease be even worse than what we're facing now? The virus hunter, Dr. Ian Lipkin, will tell you what you need to know. But first, here's the latest. While waiting for results from the first randomized clinical trials in the U.S., the FDA is warning that hydroxychloroquine alone and when combined with Z-Paks should only be given under the care of a doctor in a hospital setting or as part of a clinical trial due to concerns over heart issues. And now doctors want to know if the FDA had concerns about these commonly prescribed drugs prior to coronavirus. Meanwhile,
the worst is yet ahead of us.
A dire prediction echoed by CDC Director Robert Redfield in a Washington Post interview, warning a second coronavirus wave next winter could be potentially much worse. But in a task force press conference, the president invited Redfield to walk it back.
I didn't say that this was going to be worse. I said it was going to be more complicated or more difficult and potentially complicated because we'll have flu and coronavirus circulating at the same time.
Totally misquoted. I spoke to him, he said it was ridiculous.
But then Redfield clarified.
You were accurately quoted, correct?
I'm accurately quoted in the Washington Post as difficult.
And in the same press conference, America's top infectious disease doctor, Anthony Fauci, essentially backed him up.
We will have coronavirus in the fall. I am convinced of that. What happens with that will depend on how we're able to contain it when it occurs.
But lockdown-weary Americans want answers. And that's no easy task, since forecast models are greatly affected by our own actions. Worrisome, given the fact that some governors are beginning to open back up, against the advice of health experts and task force recommendations. During the 1918 flu pandemic, which killed an estimated 675,000 Americans, it was the unexpected second wave in the fall that was most deadly. A recently published paper found stricter isolation policies at the time led to lower total mortality in some cities. The reverse was evidently also true. After authorities in Philadelphia refused to cancel a parade, 12,000 people died over the next 6 weeks. Fast forward to today. Will Americans get back to work only to be sent home again in a second wave? I'm joined now via Zoom by famed epidemiologist Dr. Ian Lipkin, who's consulted on the movie Contagion. Dr. Lipkin, do you predict we're going to have a second wave?
I do, Mehmet. You know, during the summer, we may see some quiet, but in the fall, we can anticipate that this will be back. It's going to be more complicated still, because at the same time we're going to have COVID, we're going to have the normal seasonal flu. And it's going to be important to distinguish between them, because for flu, we currently have very good drug, oseltamivir. And hopefully we'll have some drugs for COVID at that point as well, but we don't know that yet for certain.
So if the fall is complicated by having both the flu and COVID-19, how important will a flu shot be this fall?
Oh, very much so. To the extent that we can minimize flu, the less people will be confused in clinics and emergency rooms as we try to figure out why people are sick and how to treat them. We will also have to start using tests that not only detect COVID, in fact, COVID, that is to say SARS coronavirus type 2, but also influenza virus. So we have been developing at Columbia, we have a test that will differentiate those very easily in a single PCR test, very similar to what we now do.
So in Wuhan, where the virus first emerged, we've seen that they are opening up cautiously with seating physically distanced at restaurants, health checkpoints at train stations. What are the practices we ought to be adopting here when our country reopens?
I think we can learn from what they've done, and we're already beginning to do this in many research universities around the United States. So we are testing people on a regular basis to make sure that we don't bring people in who know they're infected. And the problem, of course, is that many people are asymptomatic, and while they're asymptomatic, they still may be capable of transmitting disease. The other thing is, and I think I heard you mention this earlier, was having people spend some time apart, wearing personal protective equipment. That may be gloves. It definitely means you're washing your hands more frequently, and it means that you're wearing a mask. So all of these things are going to be essential for getting us back to work. Now, when we think about getting back to work, what does that mean? So we're still not going to have people sitting in theaters and sporting events next to one another. But and crowded bars and restaurants are going to be a problem. But we will be able to walk in the park. We will be able to go to work. We'll be able to mitigate the risk by following certain very simple methods for hygiene.
Now in Beijing, as you know, they've opened up all the gyms, and then they have to shut them down again in the wake of new cases popping up. Is the ping-ponging opening up and sending people back to work only to call them back home again and shutter again worse for conquering the virus?
I think it's not only worse for conquering the virus, I think it's worse for morale. I mean, if you feel suddenly that you have the ability to do things that you used to do and suddenly that's taken away from you, that setback is very, very difficult. People are underestimating the mental health toll of this particular outbreak and people who are forced to isolate from one another. It's very important as we move forward through addressing this pandemic that we talk about physical distancing rather than social distancing. We still need to engage and make sure that people, feel as though they have the ability to communicate with one another.
So Dr. Lipkin, when we look back to 1918, to the flu pandemic in that year, the virus is believed to have mutated in Europe. And then there was a second wave, a second spread that was even more deadly. Could that happen in COVID-19, or is the additional risk primarily because it's going to be combined with the influenza?
Well, we can never exclude the possibility that it might mutate in a way to make it more deadly, but in fact, it's already very well adapted to humans. Of all the viruses we've ever studied, this one is the most transmissible. So there's no evolutionary reason for it to change. The analogies to 1918 are useful to some extent. However, remember that in 1918, we didn't have air travel, right? So some of this wave the delays and such may have been a function of the fact that people really got around on boats. So if there's a major change in this virus structure, the way it grows, the way it reproduces itself, we're going to see it very rapidly. So even though much of the air travel is shut down, there's still movement of people who are infected.
Let me get your take, if I can, in a paper from Chinese researchers that showed that a pre-symptomatic restaurant goer may have infected 9 other people when she went out to eat with her family. So there's a picture of everyone to look at together. You can see this yellow circle in the center is where the person who first developed coronavirus sat, right? The other 9 red circles are people who developed coronavirus after being exposed to her. Now, over on the right, everyone can see there's an air conditioner located in that part of the restaurant. So researchers are suggesting that the air conditioning blew the air across the restaurant. It likely bounced off the back wall, carrying the infections to all 3 of the tables. Right now, the good news is present here, too, because there were 73 other diners on that restaurant floor at the time, same time, but none of them got infected. On the other hand, eating is something that's impossible to do with a mask on. So all this combines to create a lot of mystery in people's minds, Dr. Lipkin. How worried should we be about air conditioner or heaters spreading coronavirus as we get closer to summer and businesses begin to reopen?
Any place where people are in close contact with one another is a risk. As you said, the air conditioning probably resulted in distribution of the virus from one table to people some distance away. We're trying to find ways to deal with that by using ultraviolet light to actually sterilize the air, and hopefully we'll have news on that soon.
So, Dr. Lipkin, the president has indicated that the virus does not do well in heat and sunlight. Is there good science to back that up?
Well, if you make certain kinds of assumptions based on what's happened with other viruses, yes, it's probably true that there's a drop in the amount of infectious virus or its ability to carry when there's a cough or a sneeze or something like that. But that doesn't mean that you can basically alleviate all the risk associated with this because there's ultraviolet light or because we've got higher humidity. And I would also say that one other thing that came up recently is this business about using things like bleach solutions and alcohol to get rid of the virus. These may be safe on environmental surfaces, but on no circumstances should anybody ingest isopropyl alcohol or bleach. You can kill yourself. So we have to be very careful with how we message these things. And there have been some examples already of people who become intoxicated by ingesting bleach.
Yeah, that's very misleading to even give that hint to somebody. None of these products are designed for use inside your body. It's one of the biggest challenges we have. All right, we're learning more about this virus every day. On March the 1st, we had only 23 confirmed cases of coronavirus in Boston, Seattle, Chicago, San Francisco, and New York. These are our biggest cities, right? But new research from Northeastern University suggests there may have already been 28,000 COVID-19 infections in those cities. The first known U.S. death from coronavirus was thought to be on February the 29th in Washington state. But now, 900 miles south in California, Santa Clara County officials have determined that a woman there was infected with COVID-19 and died back on February the 6th, a couple weeks earlier. California's Governor Newsom has said they're now investigating some deaths as far back as December. Dr. Lipkin, you're the person I trust most in this stuff. You've been all over the planet researching this. How long do you believe this coronavirus has been in America?
Well, I can sort of try to give you some sort of a bracket for it. So the first cases of which we're aware in China were in December. I think it's highly unlikely that we had cases here prior to the detection of that first case in Wuhan. So I don't think we had cases in early December in the United States. Could we have cases at the end of December or the beginning of January? Absolutely, because at that point, the virus was well established in Wuhan. So I think we don't yet know when the first cases appeared in China yet either. So one of the approaches that we're trying to take to this is to use antibody tests. And what antibody tests allow you to do is to look back at the history of exposure to see when people were infected. Some of the tests that are coming out are not up to snuff, but there are better ones coming out all the time. And I think we will be able to look at historically collected samples and identify when this thing first emerged in China, when it first emerged in the United States, and that's going to be very helpful in trying to figure out how we got to the current position.
Dr. Lipkin, thank you very much. Coming up, is the virus on your pizza box, your packages, or your shoes? I'm answering the biggest questions you have about protecting your loved ones.
Breaking news. As the coronavirus pandemic continues, we have the latest details on how to keep you safe, what you need to know today, and how it will affect you tomorrow. Medical updates that will cut through the confusion, answering your questions, giving you all the facts and information you can depend on. The Dr. Oz Show, your trusted coronavirus headquarters.
Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss anything. And remember to check back often to see what's new.